Welcome to the Socialites podcast, and today we're doing a deep dive,
Yeah.
into something that I think we all take for granted,
Mm-hmm.
beverages.
Yeah.
What did people drink before there was anything besides water?
Right.
Like how far back
Yeah.
do we,
That's a great question.
what was like the OG beverage?
It really makes you think about how spoiled we are
Yeah,
in the, what we call the modern beverage eras.
the modern beverage era.
Yeah.
What is,
I mean, for most of human history,
yeah,
people pretty much just drank water.
really?
Yeah. And what we're doing now is a pretty new thing.
So that's great. So all this, we have so much variety now.
Yeah.
Coffees and teas and cocktails and all this stuff. And you're saying that's all pretty recent.
Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, it's all very new.
Wow.
And what's even more wild is that our bodies might not even be fully adapted to all these drinks.
Mm.
There was this experiment where they gave people the same amount of calories, but one group ate solid food and the other group drank their calories.
Oh, wow. So like liquid calories versus solid calories.
But the results were pretty interesting.
What happened? Did they, the liquid calorie people, turn into super athletes or something?
No, not quite.
Okay.
But the people who ate the solid food, they felt full.
Okay.
Naturally, and they adjusted how much they ate later.
Okay.
But the liquid calorie group, they didn't feel full at all, and they kept eating as if they hadn't consumed anything.
Wow. So it's like our bodies haven't quite caught up with our beverage innovation.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Wow.
It could be because liquids are processed faster,
Yeah.
than solid food, or maybe they just don't trigger the same fullness signals.
Interesting.
But it definitely highlights how new all this is.
Okay, so that's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what those, first beverages even were. I mean, was it all just fruit juice?
Well, they probably just ate the fruit,
Okay.
but there were definitely plant-based drinks that
Yeah.
popped up pretty early on.
Okay, so we're not talking about a prehistoric smoothie bar or anything.
No.
Okay. What were these early drinks? I mean, was coffee part of the picture?
Well, you and millions of others need that morning cup.
Totally.
But coffee is actually a relative newcomer. It only appeared about 600 years ago
Wow.
in the area that's now Yemen and Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
And it was mainly valued because it kept people alert, especially during long religious ceremonies.
So even back then, people were looking for that caffeine boost.
Yeah, seems like it.
What about sweetened lemon juice? That seems like it's been around forever.
You're getting warmer.
Okay.
We can trace sweetened lemon juice back over 1,000 years to Cairo.
Okay.
And then there's tea.
Oh, yeah. Tea.
Steeped in tradition, with roots in China going back about 4,700 years.
Okay, wow. Those are some serious beverage veterans.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing there are some contenders that go back even further.
Oh, you bet.
Okay.
We're talking over 6,000 years.
Okay. Now you've got me intrigued. What are these mysterious ancient drinks?
Okay, picture this, a 6,000-year-old clay tablet from ancient Mesopotamia,
Okay.
meticulously tracking the size of cow herds.
Okay.
This tablet hints at a fascinating possibility.
Huh?
The Sumerians might have been keeping these animals not just for meat, but for milk.
Wait, are you saying milk could be one of the oldest beverages?
Yeah.
That's not what I was expecting.
Yeah, it's not the usual suspect, but the evidence is pointing in that direction.
Okay.
And to confirm it, they analyzed dental plaque.
You're kidding.
Bro.
Oh.
From 6,000-year-old skeletons in Britain.
Okay. That is both gross and incredibly cool.
Yeah.
What did they find?
Well, it's actually a really effective way to see what people were eating and drinking back then,
Yeah.
and they found milk proteins.
Wow.
Which means milk was definitely on the menu.
That's amazing. But why milk? I mean, it's nutritious, but why was it so essential back then?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
Milk is a nutritional powerhouse. It's packed with vitamin D, which was crucial for people living in places that don't get a lot of sun, like Britain.
Right.
And let's not forget vitamin C, especially in areas where fresh fruit was scarce.
Yeah.
Some researchers even think that milk consumption might have helped people live longer back then.
So milk, the ancient health drink.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's one contender. You said there was another ancient beverage that was like the opposite of milk.
Right.
What did you mean by that?
Well, milk is all about practicality, life-sustaining.
Yeah.
But this other drink points to something more social, maybe even celebratory.
Okay, you're killing me here. What is this mysterious drink?
Imagine Sumerian pictographs over 5,000 years old
Okay.
depicting these pots with narrow necks and pointy bottoms.
Okay.
They look a lot like ancient breweries.
Mm.
Then you add in other Sumerian texts,
Okay.
and it becomes clear beer brewing was a serious business back then.
Beer? No way. That's incredible. I would have never guessed.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable.
Wow.
And it wasn't just a hobby. We're talking about a culture that had at least 19 different types of beer.
Wow.
They even used beer as payment, with some workers getting up to 5 liters a day.
5 liters of beer a day. Talk about happy hour.
Yeah.
But seriously, why beer? Why was it so important?
Well, it served several purposes.
Okay.
Some practical.
Oh, yeah.
And some, well, let's just say more for enjoyment.
Okay.
For one, it was a way to purify drinking water.
Right. Essential back then.
Exactly. And it also provided minerals and B vitamins.
Makes sense, but I have a feeling that the buzz might have had something to do with its popularity, too.
You're probably right.
Yeah.
There's this ancient Egyptian scroll about 3,400 years old that actually warns against drinking too much beer.
Really?
Yeah, it mentions memory loss as a side effect.
Oh, man. I guess some things never change.
Nope.
So we have these 2 amazing candidates for the oldest beverage, then with the practical provider, and beer, the social lubricant.
Exactly.
It's amazing to think that these drinks that we still enjoy today have such deep roots,
You know, it really is.
a history.
And the evidence doesn't stop there.
Really?
In fact, let's travel to China, a place with an incredibly rich drinking culture, and see what else we can uncover.
Lead the way. I'm ready for more ancient beverage adventures.
All right, so picture this along the Chan River in northern China.
Okay.
Archaeologists found 2 underground rooms dating back about 5,000 years.
Okay.
And inside, they found a treasure trove of ancient brewing equipment.
Wow.
Pot stoves, these fascinating stone funnels.
That definitely sounds like a brewery.
Yeah.
What were they brewing in those underground layers?
Well, they found remnants of grains like millet and barley.
Yeah.
But there was also this weird gunk coating the stone funnels.
Gunk. Okay, now I'm really curious.
Yeah.
What was this ancient brewing gunk?
Well, they analyzed it,
Okay.
and it turned out to be calcium oxalate, a
Right.
sediment that forms during beer fermentation.
Ah, so that's how they knew it was beer.
That's right. It was the smoking gun.
So we have 5,000-year-old beer in China. But you mentioned even older evidence, right?
Yes. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The quest for the oldest beverage takes us to ancient tombs.
Tombs.
Yeah, you see, in some parts of China, it was common to toast deceased relatives at the graveside
Okay.
and bury their drinking vessels with them.
So it was like a farewell party, making sure they had a good drink in the afterlife.
Exactly. And by analyzing the pottery in these tombs,
Yeah.
researchers have been able to track how drinking vessels evolved.
Okay.
Around 5,500 years ago, a new feature pops up, legs.
Legs? Why would they put legs on their drinking pots?
Well, it's probably not just for decoration.
Right.
Researchers think they acted like a tripod,
Okay.
so you could heat drinks over a fire.
Oh, wow. So they were having hot toddies at the graveside.
That's the idea.
Wow. So we not only have evidence of early beer, but we get a glimpse into their rituals
That's right.
and how they enjoyed their drink.
Exactly. But there's something even older. If we go back further, between 9,000 and 7,500 years ago, we see another change in the pottery.
Okay.
Pots with pinched necks.
Pinch necks. Why the change in design?
Well, these thinner necks were perfect for sealing containers,
Okay.
which is essential for fermentation.
Right.
And in 2019, archaeologists got confirmation.
Really?
They analyzed residue from these pots and found starches, fungi, gelatin, all signs of fermentation.
So they were ancient beer vats.
Exactly.
9,000-year-old beer. That's mind-blowing. I can't even imagine what that must have tasted like.
It is incredible to think about.
Yeah.
And to add to the mystery, they also found traces of flavorings like ginger and snake gourd root.
Wow.
It gives us a glimpse into what our ancient ancestors enjoyed.
So we have evidence of beer going back 9,000 years.
Yes.
What about milk? Did milk drinking go back that far too?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Okay.
Let's dive deeper into this milk versus beer debate.
Okay, let's do it. I'm ready for round 2 of the ancient beverage battle.
All right, before we jump into that, let's rewind the clock a bit.
Okay.
We need to talk about a period known as the pre-pottery Neolithic.
The pre-pottery Neolithic.
Yeah, it lasted roughly from 12,000 to 8,500 years ago.
Okay, help me out here. What does that mean?
Well, it's the period before humans widely adopted pottery.
Okay.
And this is where some leading archaeologists, like
Yeah.
Jean-Denis Vignier in France, believe milk drinking might have originated.
Wait, so you're saying that even before pots, people might have been drinking milk.
That's the idea.
But if they didn't have pots, how did they store it and how do we even know they were drinking it?
Those are great questions.
Yeah.
It's like solving an ancient puzzle with missing pieces.
Right.
But there are some clues
Okay.
that can help us piece together this milk drinking mystery.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's crack this milky code.
All right, to understand this, we need to go back to the 1980s.
Okay.
Back then, there was a theory called the secondary products revolution. It argued that milk and other secondary animal products couldn't possibly be as old as the beer we're finding in China.
Why not? What made milk so revolutionary?
Well, the idea was that early societies just weren't organized enough
Oh, yeah.
to manage herds for milking.
Okay.
They believed these societies were mainly focused on meat.
Okay.
So milk came later as a more advanced concept.
So milk was like the next level of animal husbandry.
Yeah, exactly. But Jean-Denis Vignier and other proponents of what's called old milk,
Old milk.
yeah, they had a different idea. They argued that milk production might be far older
Okay.
than anyone thought.
Okay.
They pointed to those piles of sheep and goat bones found at archaeological sites.
Right.
To them, this suggested that people were keeping herds for milk, not just for meat.
But if they didn't have pottery for storage, how can we be sure those animals weren't just for dinner? How do we know they were actually milking them?
That's where it gets clever.
Okay.
Vignier and his team looked at modern ranching and noticed a difference between meat herds and herds kept for milking.
Okay, what's the difference?
The age of the animals.
Wait, so the age of the animals can tell us whether they were raised for meat or milk?
Yeah, think about it.
Okay.
In a herd raised for meat, you slaughter the animals as soon as they're full size
Okay.
to maximize meat production.
Right.
But milking animals can be productive for much longer.
Oh, that's true.
So herds kept for milking often have older animals.
Okay, so by looking at the age of the animals in those ancient bone piles,
Yeah,
they could tell if they were raised for meat or milk.
exactly.
But how do you determine the age of an animal just by looking at its bones? Do they have ancient ID cards or something?
Well, they focused on tooth size.
Okay.
By comparing the teeth of modern animals with those found at the sites,
Yeah.
they could estimate the age.
Okay.
And guess what?
Right.
They found several bone piles that had groups of older animals,
Wow.
suggesting they might have been milking herds.
Okay, so they found evidence of these potential milking herds. But did they find any concrete proof that people were actually drinking the milk?
Well, the oldest sites with these milking age animals were in Turkey, Syria, and Iraq, dating back over 10,000 years.
Wow.
This pushed back the timeline, but the debate wasn't over.
Of course, we need more than just old bones to say definitively that people were drinking milk.
Huh.
What else did they find?
In 2001, they analyzed an 11,000-year-old human skeleton from Iran
Okay.
and found signs of brucellosis.
Brucellosis, what is that? Some ancient form of dairy allergy?
It's a disease often linked to unpasteurized dairy.
Okay.
This finding provided more support that people were drinking milk back then.
Wow. That's a pretty compelling piece of evidence. But I thought you mentioned that beer was potentially even older.
Yes, in 2018, they found possible beer residue in a cave in Israel,
Okay.
dating back 13,000 years.
So both milk and beer keep getting older.
It seems that way.
It seems like this debate might never be settled.
Yeah.
Is there any other evidence that could help us figure out which beverage came first?
Well, perhaps the most compelling evidence lies within us,
Okay.
our genes.
Wait, are you saying our DNA holds clues about ancient beverage choices?
Exactly. Researchers have been studying the genes that allow us to produce lactase,
Okay.
the enzyme that breaks down lactose, the sugar in milk.
Right.
What they found is amazing genetic adaptations from milk digestion could be as old as 20,000 years.
20,000 years. That's incredible.
It is.
So our ability to drink milk might actually predate both the beer and the pottery.
It's definitely a possibility.
Wow, we were built for milk.
It seems like it.
This is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
It seems like the modern beverage era, as you called it,
Right.
might stretch back way further than we ever imagined.
Yeah, it paints a really interesting picture of early human life
Yeah.
and how important beverages were in shaping our cultures and even our biology.
I know, it's fascinating.
But even if our modern beverage era goes back 20,000 years, that's still just a tiny fraction
Right.
of the time Homo sapiens have been around. Remember, we're talking 300,000 years. And for most of that time, water was the only option.
It really puts things in perspective.
It does.
We've come a long way from those simple water drinking days.
Absolutely. And while the debate over milk versus beer continues,
Yeah.
the evidence for both reveals something important about those early humans.
Okay, I'm all ears. What do these beverages tell us about our ancestors?
Well, on the one hand, milk represents the practical side of human nature,
Huh?
the drive for nourishment and survival.
Yeah.
It shows how resourceful early humans were.
Right.
They were constantly looking for ways to get the nutrients they needed.
Milk was essential for survival.
Yeah.
But what about beer? What does that tell us?
Beer gives us a glimpse into a different side of human nature.
Okay.
More social, maybe even spiritual.
Okay.
It hints at the desire for connection,
Right.
for celebration,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a little escape.
I like that.
It suggests that even back then, humans wanted to come together,
Yeah.
share experiences, and maybe even alter their state of mind.
That's beautiful. It's like milk and beer. These two ancient beverages represent two fundamental parts of being human: the practical and the social, the need to survive and the need to connect.
Exactly. And while we might never know for sure which came first,
Yeah.
their presence in our lives today, thousands of years later, speaks volumes.
It really does. It's like we're raising a glass to our ancestors every time we enjoy a beer or a glass of milk.
I love that.
Who knew that something as simple as a drink could hold so much history and meaning?
It's a reminder that the past is always with us.
Yeah,
It's woven into our present.
that's a great point. And speaking of exploring,
Yeah.
there's one detail about that 9,000-year-old Chinese beer that really caught my attention.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned those flavorings they found, ginger and snake gourd root.
Yeah.
It's like they were brewing ancient IPAs.
I know, right?
What do you think those flavors tell us about those early beer makers?
It's pretty fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it challenges our assumptions about ancient cultures. We tend to think of them as being limited in their knowledge and resources, but this beer recipe
Yeah.
suggests a very different story.
So you're saying they weren't just settling for like a bland basic brew, they were experimenting with flavors.
Yeah.
They were looking for something unique.
Exactly. It shows a level of sophistication
Yeah.
and a desire to create something special.
Right.
They weren't just making beer to survive.
Mhm.
They were making it for enjoyment.
It's like they were the original craft brewers.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder what other culinary secrets are hidden away in those ancient breweries.
I know, it really does. And it highlights how much we can learn about past cultures
Yeah.
by looking at their food and drink choices.
Right.
They weren't just meeting their basic needs. They were expressing their culture, their creativity, their sense of community.
Okay, so we've explored milk and beer, two contenders for the oldest beverage.
Right.
What about wine? Where does wine fit into this boozy timeline?
Well, wine's story takes us to the Caucasus region,
Okay.
specifically the country of Georgia.
Okay.
Archaeological evidence suggests that wine production was happening there around 8,000 years ago.
Wow. Georgia, the birthplace of wine. Who knew?
Yeah, pretty cool.
But what makes them so special? Why did wine emerge there first?
It seems that the region's climate, the soil, the wild grape varieties, all created the perfect conditions for winemaking.
Okay.
Plus, early humans in that area were already eating grapes.
Right.
So it's not hard to imagine them experimenting with fermentation.
So maybe it was a happy accident. Someone left those grapes out a little too long,
Could be.
and bam, the first wine is born.
It's definitely possible.
But regardless of how it happened, the discovery of wine was a big deal.
Yeah,
It wasn't just a new drink. It was a cultural phenomenon.
exactly.
Wine has always had this like air of sophistication and ritual about it. It's not just a drink, it's an experience.
Yeah, it quickly became intertwined with religion,
Yeah.
social gatherings, even medicine.
Interesting.
It was seen as a gift from the gods, a symbol of abundance and celebration.
Okay, so we have wine, milk, and beer as these ancient beverage heavyweights. What about some of the other drinks we know and love today, like coffee,
Yeah.
tea juices, even those sugary sodas that get such a bad rap these days?
Well, those are all relative newcomers.
Ah.
They appear much later in human history.
Yeah, we already talked about coffee.
Right, about 600 years ago.
Yep, and tea, while older than coffee,
Mm-hmm.
still doesn't compare to wine, milk, and beer.
What?
So what sparked the rise of these other beverages? Was it simply people wanting more variety?
It was a few things working together.
Okay.
Advancements in agriculture and trade played a huge role.
Okay.
As humans explored new lands and traded.
Yeah.
They found new plants and ingredients
Okay.
that they could use to make drinks.
That makes sense.
Mm.
Globalization and the spice trade must have opened up a whole new world of beverage possibilities.
Exactly. And as technology advanced,
Mm.
so did our ability to process and preserve these ingredients,
Okay.
which led to even more beverage innovations.
So it was like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Exploration led to new ingredients.
Mm.
Technology led to new processing methods.
Right.
And voila, we have more drinks to choose from.
Precisely. But it wasn't just about practicality.
Oh,
Changing cultural tastes and preferences also played a part.
oh, interesting. Can you give me an example?
Sure. Think about the rise of coffee.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about the caffeine.
Right.
It was about the social ritual of coffee drinking,
Right.
gathering in coffee houses to discuss ideas,
Right.
share news.
Yeah.
It became a symbol of intellectualism and social status.
That's interesting. So beverages weren't just about quenching thirst.
Right.
They were about shaping social interactions and reflecting cultural values.
Exactly. And as we moved into the modern era, industrialization and mass production had a big impact on beverages.
Okay, so how did industrialization change the way we drink?
Well, for one thing, it made beverages much more accessible
Okay.
to everyone.
Yeah.
They were no longer limited to the wealthy or those with access to special production methods.
Mhm.
Mass production made them cheaper,
Yeah.
so everyone could enjoy their favorite drinks.
That makes sense, but I imagine there were some downsides to mass production as well.
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest impacts was the standardization of taste.
Okay.
As beverages were mass-produced,
Yeah.
they became more uniform in flavor
Okay.
and lost some of the unique characteristics of traditional small-batch production.
It's like the difference between a home-cooked meal
Yeah,
and a fast food burger.
exactly.
You satisfy your hunger, but you lose some of the nuance and artistry.
That's a great analogy, and as mass production increased,
Yeah.
so did the use of additives and preservatives,
Okay.
which further changed the taste and nutritional value of drinks.
So we gained convenience and accessibility, but maybe at the cost of quality and diversity.
That's a good point. It's a trade-off that's still shaping the beverage industry today.
And speaking of trade-offs,
Yeah.
what about those sugary drinks we talked about?
Right.
When did they enter the picture?
Well, the story of sugary drinks is tied to the rise of the sugar industry.
Okay.
As sugar became cheaper and more available,
Yeah.
it ended up in more and more drinks.
The sugar was like the hot new ingredient making everything sweeter and more appealing.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about the taste.
Right.
Sugar was also a great preservative,
Okay.
which helped drinks last longer
Yeah.
and made them more profitable.
I can see how that would be a winning combination for the industry.
Right.
Tasty, addictive, and longer-lasting products.
Exactly. And as we learned more about chemistry and food science,
Mm-hmm.
we started seeing artificial sweeteners
Oh, okay.
and other additives
Yeah.
that fueled the sugary drink craze.
So from ancient beers flavored with ginger and snake gourd root
Yeah.
to mass-produced sodas loaded with sugar and artificial sweeteners.
Right.
It's clear that the evolution of beverages has been a long and complex journey.
It really has. And as we continue to experiment with new flavors,
Yeah.
new ingredients, and new technologies,
Yeah.
who knows what the future of beverages holds?
Maybe we'll all be sipping on algae smoothies
Maybe.
or 3D printed cocktails.
Who knows? Anything is possible, but one thing remains constant.
What's that?
Our fascination with beverages,
Yeah.
our desire to quench our thirst
Right.
and experience new flavors.
Hmm.
This connects us to our ancestors,
Yeah.
all the way back to those first sips of milk and beer.
It's a beautiful thought. So we've covered a lot today,
We have.
from the ancient origins of milk and beer
Mm-hmm.
to the rise of wine and the globalization of beverages.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember from this deep dive? I'm still kind of stuck on that whole 20,000-year-old milk digestion thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is pretty wild.
Like, why did humans evolve to drink milk?
Right.
I mean, most mammals lose that ability after infancy.
Right. That's why some people are lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
So what made humans different?
Good question.
Well, there are a few theories. One idea is that as humans started domesticating animals
Mm-hmm.
and using milk,
Okay.
those who could digest it had a survival advantage.
Right. If you have this readily available source of food,
Yeah.
you'd want to be able to eat it
Exactly.
without getting sick.
Those who could tolerate it would survive
Yeah.
and pass on those genes.
Survival of the fittest milk drinking edition.
Exactly. And this ability to digest milk spread through different populations over time,
Yeah.
which is why we see such widespread milk consumption today.
Right.
It's a really interesting example of how culture and biology work together
Yeah.
to shape our evolution.
It's like a coevolution
Right.
of humans. And milk, we adapted to drink milk. And milk helped make us who we are today.
It's a beautiful example of how interconnected everything is.
I love that.
And it's not just milk.
Right.
Think about all the social rituals that have developed around drinks,
Oh, yeah.
like those ancient graveside toasts.
With the heated drinks.
Yeah, exactly. Or modern coffee shop culture.
It's true. Beverages have always been more than just drinks.
Yeah.
They're a way for us to connect,
Mm.
to celebrate, to share stories,
Right.
to mark important moments.
Exactly. They're part of our social interactions.
Yeah.
Our cultures, our traditions, even our religious ceremonies.
That's a great point.
They've helped shape our history, our identities,
Mhm.
our relationships with each other, and the world around us.
Wow. I think this deep dive has given our listeners a lot to think about.
I hope so. I hope it inspires them to see their next cup of coffee or glass of wine in a new light,
Yeah.
with a sense of wonder and appreciation for how far those beverages have come.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah,
Well, it's been a pleasure exploring the world of beverages with you today.
it has been
I
fun.
feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn,
Exactly.
more to discover.
That's what makes it so exciting.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, it's time to wrap up this deep dive into the history of beverages. A huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this fascinating adventure through time.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We had a blast.
If you have any thoughts on the episode or any cool beverage facts you've come across,
Yeah.
leave a comment below.
We love hearing from you.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please share it with a friend.
Yeah, spread the beverage love.
Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive for more fascinating explorations.
We'll be back with more soon.
Cheers to the endless pursuit of knowledge.
Cheers to that.
Until next time, keep diving deep.